welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. We have an update, substantial update, on the Vince McMahon Janelle Grant lawsuit. It is a petition to the court from Janelle Grant's attorneys to Carlin M. Colker, MD of Peak Wellness. She is suing him, or trying to get him to release her electronic medical record, under the guise that it might help her with her lawsuit against Vince, as well as implicate Colker, Vince, WWE, and Peak Wellness or whatever, and some kind of RICO investigation that they want to do. Let's just get into this. I've already read it, and I'm not going to lie to you, man. The more I read about this kind of stuff, the less I'm starting to... I know I've already been critical of her on this channel, but I'm trying to be fair. But I'm seeing that a lot of this stuff it's not really adding up. But we'll talk about it as usual. You got to apply just a little bit of critical thinking. But let's go through her filing. The filing was in the Superior Court, Judicial District of Stanford. It was filed on July the 1st. It is called a Bill of Discovery Complaint. It says this is a pre-action discovery petition brought forth pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes. Plaintiff Janelle Grant is a resident of Stanford. Upon information, I believe defendant Carlin M. Colker resides at, they blocked out his address. It says, at all times relevant to this action, Dr. Colker has been a physician licensed to practice medicine in the state of Connecticut. They talk about Peak Wellness. It says, upon information and belief, Peak Wellness is wholly owned by Dr. Colker, who serves as director. Now let's get to the important bit, as how this relates to Vince McMahon. So it says that Dr. Colker typically treats various WWE employees, and that Ms. Grant was an employee from June 2019 to March 2020. And on or around November 2019, McMahon arranged that Ms. Grant see Dr. Colker to treat her fatigue and insomnia. Then it says, at McMahon's direction, Ms. Grant began seeing Dr. Colker regularly from November 22, 2019 to April 15th, 2022. So that means that she was still seeing this doctor even after she left WWE. So Ms. Grant saw Dr. Colker or another practitioner at Peak Wellness on or at least 60 occasions. So she was going back to this hospital numerous times. She says on multiple visits, Dr. Colker prescribed Ms. Grant with quote-unquote adrenal trays or adrenal supplement trays provided by his office, and instructed her to take the unmarked pills daily. Dr. Colker did not explain the substances, dosages, or purpose of the pills to Ms. Grant beyond purportedly addressing her symptoms of fatigue. When Ms. Grant asked Dr. Colker about the substance of the supplement trays, and specifically what substances caused her to experience nausea, he responded with pushback about trust, including, if you don't trust me, we have bigger problems. Let's stop right here. So she went back and forth to this hospital for fatigue. They gave her adrenal trays and adrenal supplement trays that were unmarked, and then the doctor did not tell her what she was taking, and she took them anyway? I work in medicine. You have the right to know what you're going to take. All right. If somebody prescribes you something, you have a legal right to know what it is. Well, that's just in Michigan. I live in Michigan. But I'm pretty sure Connecticut is not that much different. I'm pretty sure in Connecticut, doctors can't just stuff pills in your mouth and not tell you what they are. All right. And I'm pretty sure if you're a fully grown adult person, you're not just going to take random pills that you got from a doctor. All right. Especially this doctor, who is apparently a celebrity doctor who is all about steroids. He is a big steroid guy. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll get to it. Also, celebrity doctor. Just underline that because it was mentioned in her original lawsuit. Here's another bit. It says Dr. Coker also prescribed weekly IV infusions and similarly did not disclose the substance of the infusions to Ms. Grant, other than a generalized description of in a drip lounge menu. These treatments caused Ms. Grant to feel unwell during IV sessions, which Dr. Coker attributed to individual tolerance. So she was getting IV drips, and again was not told what's in the IV. Huh? And you continued with this. For how long exactly? Oh yes, I'm about to open my veins so you can just put random stuff inside me. And you're not going to tell me what it is? Come on. Okay. Let's just go. It says, additionally, an employee of Peak Wellness also was involved in several instances of sexual abuse against Ms. Grant by McMahon, as further described in Ms. Grant's federal complaint. So she's not saying that this doctor was involved, Dr. Carlin Coker, but somebody else who works there. Okay. She says on Ms. Grant's last visit to Peak Wellness in April 2022, Dr. Coker demanded that she sign a statement that required her to provide a credit card to pay for her visits to the clinic. When Ms. Grant refused, Dr. Coker berated her and asked, "What's the matter, Janelle? Is there a problem with money? Is this about the NDA?" So when it came time to pay, she said no. But when it came time to shove random pills down her throat, give them to me. Random IV in her veins, give it to me. But when it comes time to give a credit card number so she can pay for these things herself, she was like, oh, no. I know I'm critical. Some people say I'm a little bit biased, but bro, you're an adult. Just think about this. Have you ever went to a hospital and a doctor has told you take these pills and you just did it? Most people know what they're taking, they don't take it. So I can't imagine somebody just pumping themselves full of pills and they don't know what it is. I just can't imagine that. But this is the world we're supposed to believe in. Let's go to continue. It says, by letters dated February 5th, 2024 and March 20th, 2024, Ms. Grant, through counsel, requested her medical records from Peak Wellness in electronic format pursuant to Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act. In response to each letter, Dr. Coker and Peak Wellness provided records to Ms. Grant's counsel in paper copies only. So she asked for her electronic records. They sent her paper copies. It says Peak Wellness used electronic record keeping for Ms. Grant medical records, as she was instructed to utilize an iPad for administrative purposes, such as patient intake in the Peak Wellness office. To date, despite repeated requests, Dr. Coker and Peak Wellness has failed to refused to provide Ms. Grant electronic medical records, including any associated metadata. All right, so this is kind of problematic. She has a right to her medical records. They will have to prove that there's a difference between the paper copies that they have and the medical records that they are asking for in an electronic format. Because they could just say, well, we printed out everything and sent it to her. You know, I mean, what more do you want? You know, you print out these things and we faxed it over or whatever. I don't know. But she says that these documents were inaccurate and incomplete. She says there are billing records that do not have corresponding medical records that do not have a corresponding billing record, inconsistent billing rates, and double charges. Oh my goodness. This guy sounds like a crook. These sound like crooks, brother. And this is actually believable right here, because hospitals will do all kinds of nonsense and try to get away with it. Insurance scams, all kind of horseshit, right? She says the medical records provided by Peak Wellness also do not contain a copy of Peak Wellness's privacy policy, despite the HIPAA requirement that covers entities distribute a plain language notice of privacy practices to all patients. Okay. She says that each of the patient receipts, defendant provided itemize the charges for each service and indicate a patient paid the full amount. However, Ms. Grant never received or paid a single medical bill from either Peak Wellness or Dr. Coker. That's because WWE paid for it. And that's exactly what it says next. Upon information and belief, McMahon and or WWE paid for each of Mrs. Grant's medical bills from Peak Wellness and Dr. Coker, totaling over $51,000, which is sensible if she had medical insurance or something like that. It's more than likely, especially if, she's dating the boss, he probably just paid all her medical bills. $51,000 in medical bills. That's a lot of fatigue and insomnia, bro. A lot of fatigue and insomnia. All right, we're going to go through, we're not going to read every single word here. She says that Dr. Coker had personal knowledge of the circumstances surrounding a purported non-disclosure agreement at issue in the federal action. She says that during the negotiation, McMahon approved of Ms. Grant asking Dr. Coker for an attorney referral. Dr. Coker recommended defendant's attorney to Ms. Grant, and upon McMahon's approval, Ms. Grant engaged that attorney to represent her in the negotiation of the purported non-disclosure agreement. So that means that Vince McMahon actually had a hand in her picking her attorney to negotiate her NDA. So she's basically trying to say that the NDA is invalid because she didn't have her own individual attorney, that instead she had an attorney that was suggested to her by a friend of Vince McMahon. But this is the first time we've ever heard of this. It wasn't mentioned the first time, which is something that you really should discuss if the person you are suing is the one who provided you, whether directly or indirectly, with an attorney. Because that's a conflict of interest. Why is it now 6 months later and we're just not hearing about this? Interesting. She says plaintiff seeks records and testimony from defendants regarding medical records and all associated metadata, defendant record keeping and billing procedures, payment records related to Mrs. Grant, defendant's payment arrangements with McMahon or WWE, the purpose of Ms. Grant's prescribed treatments. The purpose? Wouldn't you know the purpose if you was the one going to the hospital? If you was the one going to the clinic, you know why you were going to the clinic, right? The substance of Mrs. Grant's prescribed treatments. Okay. Any communications between Dr. Coker and McMahon regarding or relating to Ms. Grant. I would assume she's talking about private conversations, because they would not be able to discuss her medical issues, because that's a HIPAA violation. If, they were telling Vince anything about her treatments. So I guess she's trying to see if they were talking about her, which I guess is fair. It's a fair question to ask. But this will also, of course, scoop in if they were having any other conversations about her, whether those things are about her medical records or not. So maybe they say, oh, she's got a nice ass, and they're sending text messages to each other. Hey, Janelle's got a nice ass. Then that will be considered about her, and she will want to know that. And it's basically about, bolstering her complaint. So it says, quote, Dr. Coker's involvement in recommending Mrs. Grant attorney for negotiation of the purported non-disclosure agreement. So basically wants to know if, Vince had any hand in that, which is a legitimate concern. The information that Ms. Grant has requested is material and necessary to determine whether defendants were civil conspirators in her pending claims against McMahon and WWE. So she doesn't know whether they are. She's just saying that they are, and she wants to go through a fishing expedition to see if they are. I guess she can. She can request her medical records. That seems to be the most sincere question here. But she's seemingly using the medical thing to get to the other stuff. Basically, hey, I just want these medical records. At least that's what I'm telling everybody. But I really want all communications between you and WWE, you and Vince. Which is, just ask for that, I guess. But you would have to get to that stage of the lawsuit, and then you would get all that information anyway, but you'll get it from Vince, because they'll take his cell phone, his laptop, or any other devices that he used, and they'll go through his emails and texts and all that kind of stuff. So she'll get this stuff anyway. She'll get it from Vince, but she won't get it until they go to Discovery. She's trying to get it from this doctor, which is fine, I guess, because ultimately you do want to compare those two things, the information you get from the doctor, the information you'll get from Vince, to see if those two things line up. And then here comes the big bomb that caught my attention, that made me raise my eyebrow. It says the information is also material and necessary to determine whether defendants have engaged in falsifying medical records, racketeer influenced and corrupt Organization Act violations, RICO conspiracy, assault, battery, and or breaches of fiduciary against Ms. Grant. She's looking to see if they're violating RICO laws. That seems interesting. Very interesting. Plaintiff has potential causes of action sounding in civil conspiracy, aiding and abetting, fraud, assault, battery, RICO conspiracy, and or breach of fiduciary duty that will be supported by the material sought. So she believes that all of these things can be proven if they turned over every single stitch of communications to her. And even if it's not proven, she will still have the information. That's an interesting usage. As the parties in control of Ms. Grant's medical records, defendants are the sole parties in possession of the information in question. But she's flopping back and forth between medical information and other kinds of information. She certainly has the right to ask for it. And she's trying to get a court to mandate that they turn these documents over. And it says this petition is the sole remedy at law that provides plaintiff to determine the existence of a cause of action against Dr. Coker and or Peak Wellness. Granting this petition will prevent a failure or delay in justice. Okay. This is not, it has the potential to be something major if it were something criminal going on. Now, this Dr. Coker, he is a celebrity doctor. Meaning he's been in documentaries. He used to be a bodybuilder, this Dr. Coker. He used to be a well sought after physician. Vice did a piece on him. Meet Dr. Carlin Coker, the personal health guru behind Kristaps Porzingis. I guess he's a basketball player or something. And at the time this was written, it was 2018. And Coker was 52 years old. And it says that he's a former competitive bodybuilder, powerlifter, mixed martial arts fighter turned medical doctor, FACN, nutritionist, author, diet inventor, and personal trainer to stars and non-stars alike. So throughout the article, we're hearing that Dr. Coker has worked with actors like Jeremy Piven, pop stars like Justin Bieber, basketball players like this Kristaps Porzingis guy or whatever. And of course, because it's an article from Vice, there's a bunch of people throwing dirt on his name, calling him a snake oil salesman and all this kind of stuff. While other people are talking about how he's a genius. So it's very, very controversial. He's a controversial doctor. In fact, he is so controversial that later in the article, I actually have to read this. They actually discuss some quote-unquote red flags with Dr. Coker. It says, quote, he does have a few red flags. In 2008, he made the media rounds defending his patient Jeremy Piven, who had pulled out of a production of Speed the Plow, claiming that he'd eaten so much sushi he'd contacted mercury poisoning. Oh, wow. He was also cited in multiple lawsuits concerning ephedra-based dietary supplements. In what such class action lawsuit, it was alleged that Coker had fudged the result of a clinical study he performed on Xenadrin EFX while he had been employed by the manufacturer. Though Coker denied that he produced falsified results, the presiding judge found him, quote, not credible. In 2003, the overuse of ephedra contributed to the death of Baltimore Orioles pitcher Stephen Betchler, according to the autopsy. He'd had a bottle of Xenadrin crammed in his locker. Multiple NFL players also suffered premature deaths in the early 2000s, though coroners did not specifically blame ephedra. So Coker apparently told Entertainment Weekly that Jeremy Piven had mercury in his bloodstream 6 levels higher than normal. So they're saying this guy he's a little bit shady. There's a little bit shady. So he might be up to no good. He might be up to no good. Also, this guy was in a documentary called, I think it's Bigger, Faster, Stronger. It is a pro-steroids documentary. Well, at least he's a pro-steroids doctor. That came out in 2008. So he's jacked too. He's a huge dude. You know, he's a pretty big guy. And Dr. Coker is actually in this piece. According to Wikipedia, so take that for what it's worth, he was also involved with a bunch of other supplements. Apparently he's been in court several times, or products that he has supported has ended up in court several times. He, of course, has also been sued several times. So, but when it comes to that ephedra issue, he had actually gotten dropped from that lawsuit. I just saw that in the New Haven Register. And that article was printed or posted in 2004, which is 4 years before the article in Vice. 14 years before the article in Vice I read. So Vince McMahon's spokesperson had a response to this, and it goes thus. Ms. Grant's petition for pre-action discovery against Dr. Coker is a direct violation of the court-ordered stay and nothing more than an attempt to generate publicity on her false allegations and to harass people connected to Mr. McMahon, who is being sued by Ms. Grant in a separate matter. The facts are that Ms. Grant told Mr. McMahon she was fatigued and asked him to recommend a doctor. Ms. Grant called Dr. Coker and became a patient of his. Her statement in the filing is inconsistent with her prior remarks. Ms. Grant never had anything but good things to say about the doctor when speaking to Mr. McMahon and others about him. Well, we don't have any evidence that she was speaking well of him, but we do have the implication that she went back numerous times, which kind of implies that she was happy with the service. You wouldn't keep going back unless you were happy with the service, right? So, but this Dr. Coker, he is controversial to say the least. He's massive, like giant meathead doctor. Guy was in Bigger, Stronger, Faster promoting steroids. Always in the middle of some kind of lawsuit about supplements. People have died that have been pushing supplements that he has used at some point. So there's a lot of meat here to talk about this guy and that he might be up to no good. Also, there was a GQ article about him and Justin Bieber. Nothing in there that's too important, but when Justin Bieber was asked who suggested the Dr. Coker to him, he actually shut down and said he didn't want to talk about that. So that's a very queer response to a simple question of, hey, where did you find this doctor? And he's kind of like, wait, hey, I don't know. That's kind of personal, brother. Like, same article, he's talking about doing Adderall and codeine. He's talking about his love life, but he can't answer the question of who suggested a doctor to him. So all this stuff is very shady and very shrouded. And Coker looks like the kind of doctor who would hang out with Vince McMahon. You know, the guy's just a meat mountain, and he's a former bodybuilder. So it seems to be a almost one-to-one lineup to be the kind of guy Vince McMahon would see if something was going wrong with him. The guy's shady. He's constantly involved with lawsuits over dietary supplements. I mean, right up Vince McMahon's alley. He hangs around nothing but shady, weird people. So, and John Cena, who obviously is a saint and would never do anything wrong. But, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.